So hello everyone, I'm Adrian, I'm from Berlin, I'm the founder and CEO at Spielworks. We're a Web3 gaming studio and publisher, and we also run the game distribution platform that's called Wombat. We're actually specialized on bringing Web2 gamers into Web3, right? So we work with a lot of Web2 game companies as well. We have over 3 million users in our ecosystem, and we also run the NFT staking game that's called Wombat Dungeon Master, which is about 9th on DApp Radar rankings according to daily active wallets, if you look at games. So yeah, we've been in the business for quite a while, and I want to talk to you today about integrating patterns about how you can integrate NFTs and blockchain into mobile games specifically, because we've been strong on mobile. We've had a lot of studios asking us, so what can we do especially to overcome the problems with Apple and Apple Store listings when it comes to Web3, right? So we ended up actually creating a little framework for our partners and a lot of companies who want to get in the space. It's not as technical as the talk before, but let's get to it. So why do we even talk about mobile games, right? You might think that mobile is just a small niche, whatever. Turns out, actually, mobile gaming is providing for about 60% of the total gaming market nowadays, right? And it's been growing rapidly, so it's the most relevant category in terms of overall platforms, and it's been growing so fast. It's basically, mobile gaming is responsible for basically all the major growth that we've seen in traditional gaming. In Web3 gaming, we obviously have these issues that mostly are like the bigger spenders in traditional games on mobile are on iOS. But Web3 games have been struggling with iOS. With our app, we are struggling with iOS and Apple's weird policies. It's all political. So there's got to be a solution for this. So obviously, you know why Web3 gaming is relevant, why you would want to have Web3 gaming. I typically include that slide if I talk to non-Web3 people, because they might not really kind of fully understand it. So I don't think we have to talk about that in too much detail. But what's important here is that when we speak about Web3 gaming, we typically always talk about two things: ownership and interoperability, right? And we could talk for hours about interoperability and what it means and how we interpret that and how other people interpret that. But for us, it's really important, because what you actually end up wanting if you build Web3 into mobile games is you obviously want to keep these things. You want to keep these properties of Web3. You don't want to just do it for a marketing push, right? And say, hey, we're doing NFTs, and then they're running somewhere in the background and you don't own your keys and what, right? You don't want this, because you would be losing out on those properties. So that's why I wanted to kind of remind ourselves about this. So yeah, now we're talking about Web3 gaming. What's Web3 gaming? Do you have an idea of what the prototypical Web3 game is? Like how it works, how it integrates with wallets, how you own your NFTs or your crypto assets. There is no one kind of solution or no one pattern there, right? There's multiple patterns, there's multiple ways of doing that. There's terms like Web 2.5, there's like all kinds of different things, and we're trying to like dissect that a little bit and get into kind of a little bit more of an understanding of how it can be done. And for us, it's really the most important differentiating factors are in how much interoperability do you allow, how much control do you have over your assets that you've issued as a game maker, what are the technical limitations, and what are your publishing possibilities, and I've been talking about that Apple issue here. So essentially, there's multiple ways of dealing with that and of looking at that. So we could, again, look at that from an interoperability perspective. What we typically try to do is look at it from kind of where are the assets of the users stored? Where are they held, and how do they interact with them? Where are your assets? From this perspective, we look at that, right? And there, the major kind of differentiating factors is whether you as a game, you run your own wallet for the assets. And obviously, that can then be game-specific or cross-game enabled. So there's big publishers like Netmarble, come to us and so on, who run their own kind of wallet platforms that are like cross-game but only work within their ecosystem, right? Or whether you allow for external wallets, like MetaMask, whatever, logins, standardized wallet logins, where obviously it's kind of clear that this will enable more interoperability, and we'll get to that in a second. So I've basically put up 4 different types of integrations, and because when talking about this, it always reminded me of chicken and how they're being held, right? And there's different types of like chicken and how you can buy eggs and chickens, right? So for us, when the game actually operates their own wallet and you have a game-specific wallet in each game, we call that the caged chicken, right? So you wouldn't sometimes even know that the game operator actually operates a wallet for you. They would give you an address where you can deposit your assets, right? You would deposit your assets, your tokens, and then you would be spending them, and then you would have to request a withdrawal from the game in order to get your assets back, right? So some of you may have seen that. There's a bunch of examples for that. It's not very popular anymore because that obviously doesn't solve the iOS problem, right? From a pure Web3 perspective, this is pretty much the worst that you can do. That's why we call that caged chicken, right? Because the only thing that you get is basically on-chain traceability of the assets that you transfer in and out of the wallet. So you can prove that of a certain NFT there only exist like 1,000 things or so. But the game companies, so long as the assets are deposited in that game-specific wallet, it's typically custodial. So the game developers or publishers would retain control over all these assets, and the gamers wouldn't have that control. So then we go to what we call the barn chicken. So that's the kind of, they get a little bit more space. So the assets get a little bit more space. So it's kind of the publisher-wide solution for running a wallet, right? It's not game-specific, but it's publisher-specific. It's very similar to the game-specific wallet, but some of these can be non-custodial. Many are still custodial, right? Because they want to make it easier on the users, so that's why they make them custodial. They make web wallets and stuff. But some of them actually also make them non-custodial. So we would basically download an app for when you are supposed to play a game by a certain publisher, you would download their app. So that's like the Marble X or whatever app, right? And then you can basically deal with your assets for all the games that they have, that this publisher has, integrated with Web3 in the same way, right? You would have your assets and you would be able to interact with those. And it's obvious that there is some interoperability there, because you could basically interoperate your assets across all the games that you have as a publisher, right? But getting them in and out is obviously still this kind of depositing withdrawal process. Then we have the free-range chicken. So this is some people call that Web 2.x, right? 2.5. Where you keep the game clients as they are, and then you have a separate website, a Web3 portal, where you link your game account with your Web3 wallet, with your MetaMask, whatever, your Wombat, and then the game obviously knows that you hold these assets, and sometimes you would have to stake them, sometimes it's enough to just keep them in the wallet, but this is kind of, we're getting the feel of Web3 here, right? Because you are responsible for your assets as a user, which is sometimes scary for gamers, right? But this is actually where we open up all the possibilities that Web3 offers, and typically you would use a non-custodial wallet for this, obviously, right? And you would retain full ownership for as long as you don't have to stake these assets. And then we have the kind of direct login, which we call the meta chicken, where you would basically directly log into the game client with your wallet, right? So sometimes when these are web-based games, obviously you can just open them in the browser and log in with your MetaMask. Sometimes they would have they would be downloadable clients, and you would have an SDK that you implement to actually log in with your wallet. And the same thing would happen as for the free range, right? You would basically retain control over your assets as a player. You would have full interoperability, and you don't have to go somewhere else in order to actually link your account, right? So if we compare those different types of models in terms of how easy will it be to get them listed on the App Store versus what the UX looks like, right? Then typically the simplest possible UX is the caged chicken, right? Where the user doesn't even see, they don't even have to understand sometimes that they're using a Web3 game, and they would have the option of cashing in ETH or tokens or Bitcoin or whatever into a custodial wallet to spend in the game, right? So that's typically the most familiar UX. But at the same time, it may or may not be easy to list it in the app, get it listed in the App Store, depending on how many other payment options you have for the App Store, like through the App Store and these kinds of things, right? And then we have the barn chicken, where you have this publisher-specific wallet, and these are typically traditional games that are being connected with a Web3 layer with this kind of publisher-specific wallet. So like Come to Us and Netmarble and so on who have done this. So there's typically no issues with App Store listings there, or not as many. Whereas on the other side, we have a slightly more complex user experience, right? Where you have to onboard players into non-custodial wallets first before they can actually have the full Web3 experience of the game, right? So obviously the UX is more complex. You first have to send them to a different product. They have to understand what they're doing. They have to take care of their backups and so on, right? And at the same time, these games typically struggle getting listed on the App Store. Maybe this is not super accurate anymore, so I should probably move this one here up a little bit, because there's been more patterns of how that's successfully been applied, and then recently Apple have been doing more of a pushback against Web3 in games, so that's a little bit of a problem. And here we have another kind of evaluation in terms of how much control you keep as a game creator. So this is from a game creator point of view, and how much interoperability we actually get, right? And here it's kind of clear that the caged chicken, the one where you have game-specific wallets, you pretty much retain full control over your assets, right? Because they're stored in your online wallet. And we recently, like that was last week or the week before, right? When Dapper Labs were punished, or like at least there was a ruling by a court in New York saying that their NFTs might actually be securities because they retain full control over them, and they've been marketing them as, hey, you can make a lot of money by investing in those NBA Top Shots things, right? So this alone, the fact that they've been holding them in a custodial wallet and we're retaining full control over these assets, and there's no other way than going through the Dapper Labs platform to get them out, it's not clear, right, but might actually constitute the NFTs as securities, which is kind of crazy, right? So there's also the bad things to having all the control. Yeah, but you also lose out on all the interoperability. Whereas on the free range and the meta chicken, you obviously have all the interoperability that you want. You can just take your assets, put them in another game, stake them, burn them, like destroy them, whatever you want, right? You sell them, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to ask anyone. So that's obviously the full range of interoperability that we have, that's possible with Web3, and this is where we are going. That's where we are trying to go with the kind of maximum of interoperability and the least amount of control for assets. But obviously, as we saw, it's not as easy to get these apps listed on an app store, for instance. So that's me already. Hope you had a little bit of fun, and hope you're all having fun at ETH Denver all together. And if you have any questions, we can have a bunch. Yes, please. Is there anyone with a microphone here?
Thank you. So are you on the app stores? Like where, I guess you gave your 4 options. I'm curious, like your personal, your company journey, where has it led to you so far?
So for the App Store listing, if you're if you have a direct login for a wallet, that's not going to work, right? Because the argument by Apple is always that you will be able to buy stuff somewhere else, and there was this ruling, I think last year, again, the lawsuit with Epic, right, where they had to allow that you can buy stuff on the third, like on a separate website. So this is the equivalent. So that's why kind of the free range, that should typically work, and Thetan and Arena and these kinds of games have done that. So this is kind of the pattern that I would employ right now, and that is what we are looking for with the games that we're going to be launching.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks. Any more questions? Cool. Thanks a lot. We're a bit ahead of time, but thanks a lot, and see ya.